Hello everyone and welcome back. We are going to be doing a bit of a different video today. So I'm going to be talking through all of the books that I read in March. I am no booktuber, I'm not a book talker, I'm not a book grammar, whatever the Instagram version is. But I do really enjoy reading. It's something that has become a source of relaxation and entertainment for me just as much as watching Netflix or YouTube. I really enjoy reading, and I thought that I would do a bit of a monthly wrap-up series, so get ready with you guys, do my makeup and just talk about the books that I've read over that past month. So I have read 6 books in March, and I set myself a reading goal in 2024 to read 50 books. Last year I read 26, and that was when I really started to get back into reading and was reading every day. So far this year I've already read 20, so we are well on our way to achieving the 50 books that I want to read this year. I do hope that you enjoy. If you are here for the makeup, then I will of course link everything that I am using down below. I'm not going to be discussing what products I'm using or anything like that, because I will just get confused between talking about makeup and talking about the books I've read. So if you are here for a bit of book content, then I do hope you enjoy. This is my first time talking about books, so I might not be as eloquent as I would like. I might not describe things very well. We're just testing the waters here. So yeah, I do hope that you enjoy. If you do, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you're not already. My name is Millie and I do beauty videos with the occasional lifestyle and routine video thrown in as well. So if that sounds good, then do make sure you are subscribed, and let's get into it. I'm going to try not to obviously spoil anything in this video. I'm never sure like how much detail is too much detail when it comes to books and such. So in March I read a total of 6 books, which is actually quite a lot. Normally I average at like 1 a week or something, but I haven't read a lot of long books lately. So I did finish a book just last night, but that obviously is April, so I'm not going to count that in today's video. Again, all the makeup that I'm going to be using is going to be linked down below. I'm not going to be talking through the makeup because I don't think my brain can multitask that well. I was thinking about doing makeup favourites and also then wrapping up the books that I've read in March as well, doing like beauty and book favourites, but I don't know if that's just a bit too much for one video, so I thought, well, I'll just get ready with you guys. My makeup will be linked down below, and if you want to follow along, obviously do feel free. If you want to hear about some books, then equally great. We'll see how this goes today. I don't know. I don't really talk about books, so we will see. So the first book that I finished in March was Ruthless Vows by Rebedcca Ross. So Ruthless Vows is the second part of Divine Rivals, which is like a young adult kind of fantasy romance. I would say the romance is very young adult in this. It's not spicy at all, so if you quite like that, if you're just there for a bit of a fantasy plot, there's a little bit of magic in there as well, and a nice kind of innocent amount of romance, I would say, then I think that it's quite a nice book to go for. And I think there's only 2 in the series. I don't know if there's any more that are going to be released, but so far there's only 2. So the story basically follows 2 young journalists, and there is a war going on. But again, the war, you know, it's not super complex. The politics aren't really hard to get your head around. But there are 2 kind of rival newspapers in the city, and the different newspapers are kind of in support of the 2 different gods that are going to war basically. So they become war correspondents. It's not super gruesome or heavy on, you know, the politics, as this one is quite easy to follow along. It doesn't just information dump or anything like that. It will be, you know, a couple of sentences here and there that just give you a tiny bit more context as to what's going on and the different gods in the world that are going to war. Both of the main characters have inherited these magical typewriters that can communicate with one another without actually having to go and physically send a letter. So there's like a little bit of magic in there. I would say I preferred the second book, Ruthless Vows, over Divine Rivals. And I don't know if it's because I feel like when I'm reading a series or a duology or something. When I get to the second book, you are already familiar with the characters, you've already built a bit of a connection with them, so I feel like I always enjoy the second book a little bit more because you have that level of understanding and you have that kind of connection with the characters already. So I rated Ruthless Vows a 4. So again, I enjoyed it, I think it's good. It's definitely not a spicy fantasy either. And in the second book, you're more so following the characters trying to kind of get back together, and not in a romantic way, in like a physical, they are trying to literally reach one another. That's what I mean by that. So yeah, I think if you're looking for a fantasy, you're quite new to fantasies and you don't want something that's too complex, that has a lot of politics that you have to understand, I think that's quite a nice little duology. So I enjoyed them. I don't think I rated either of them over a 4-star. 4-star for me is like my kind of average rating. So if I really enjoyed a book but there wasn't anything that particularly stood out as being like, oh my god, that's amazing, it's probably going to be 4 stars. If I feel like it was good and enjoyable but it was lacking quite a lot in certain places, then that's when it will be bumped down to like a 3. So yeah, for me, I think I gave both of them 4 stars. So the next book I read was Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. I feel like I'm going to butcher a lot of these. I do apologise. This is a mystery thriller. It's basically based on a true crime podcast, and the podcast host is basically opening up a case about a woman who died at a wedding. So it's kind of in the grounds of the wedding venue, and everybody thinks that it was the best friend who committed the murder, but there was never enough evidence to go off to actually convict her. So you follow the podcast host as he interviews a lot of people in the very small town in which the murder took place, and you obviously get, you also follow the story of the best friend who has been accused of this murder, and everyone in the town basically thinks that she is guilty. But again, there was never enough hard evidence to actually convict her. So it was very interesting actually reading this one, because it was, I imagine it would make a really good audiobook because you do read it in that podcast style. So but it's very much an interview style. If you've read like Daisy Jones and the Six, again, that's in that interview style. So I imagine it would make a really good audiobook actually. And I did enjoy it. There wasn't a lot of twists and turns, which I really like in a mystery thriller. I think you can kind of follow the story, you can kind of piece everything together. I would say the ending was, it was a bit shocking, but it was also not, if you know what I mean. I feel like there was a lot of different possibilities and outcomes that could have happened, and yes, what did end up happening I think was just one of many kind of possible outcomes that you piece together as a reader as you're following along the story. So it wasn't necessarily the most gripping and thrilling book in the world. And for me, if I'm reading a mystery, if I'm reading a thriller, I like there to be like 1 or 2 plot twists that really catch you off guard. I feel like for me, that is what makes a really good thriller, and this one didn't really have that. I did really enjoy the podcast element of it. When he's interviewing the different people in the town, you get a lot of different perspectives, and again, you can kind of piece the story together. But for me, I think I rated this one a 3.5. So again, it was good, but mystery thrillers for me have to have that element of surprise. They have to constantly keep you guessing, and I don't feel like this one necessarily did. And then the next one is Part of Your World by Abby Jimmanez. I think this is the first Abby Jimmanez book that I've read. I'm trying to go through. So I track all of my books on my Notion. I have like a book kind of dashboard on there. Yeah, I think this is the first Abby Jimmanez book I've read. So in this book you follow Alexis, who is a doctor. She comes from a very wealthy family of doctors who are very high up in the hospital that they work in, and it's the classic, like, she breaks down on the edge of a small town, and the main love interest in the book, Daniel, basically rescues her. So Daniel he grew up in this very, very small town where, you know, people aren't super, super wealthy. They work hard for their money. I think he's a carpenter, and he also owns a B&B in the little town that they live in. So when Alexis gets rescued by Daniel after she's broken down, you kind of follow the two characters as they start to form a little bit of a connection, and Alexis is having a hard time with it because she, again, is from a very different world. She is very, very wealthy. Her parents are quite strict, I guess you could say. I want Alexis to stay married to her current guy, to her current partner, who she is actually trying to get a divorce from, basically. So Alexis kind of keeps the connection on a bit of a down low, and then her friends decide to go on a bit of a weekend away, and one of their friends actually books the B&B that Daniel owns, and so Alexis is like, oh my goodness. So that kind of throws a bit of a spanner in the works for Alexis, because she is trying to keep this relationship secret because she knows that her friends won't really accept Daniel. She knows her family won't accept Daniel because he is a very, very different type of guy, has a very different upbringing, and yeah, it's just worlds apart from the life that Alexis lives. So you kind of follow her through that, through their kind of secret relationship, as it were. I rated this one a 4.5. I did really, really enjoy it, and it's just quite a fun romance. I really like Abby's writing as well. The one thing that did annoy me a little bit is I felt really sorry for Daniel throughout like half of the book. I felt like the main character was really stringing him along for the most part, and that did frustrate me. I did feel a bit sorry for Daniel. But yeah, other than that, I gave it a 4.5. It's a good little romance, a good palette cleanser if you are in between some heavy fantasy books. I do love a romance for that reason. I think they're just quite quick and fast paced and easy to get through. The next book I read is Finlay, Donavan is Killing It. So this is another mystery thriller, but I mean, it's not really a thriller if I'm honest with you. It's very low stakes mystery. So Finlay Donavan is a mystery thriller author. So she writes about crime, she writes about murder, mystery, that kind of thing. And she is having, the book kind of starts out with her having a meeting with her agent or someone that works with her on her publishing team. And they are just talking about some upcoming books. And somebody in the cafe overhears and is under the impression that Finlay herself is actually a murderer and hires Finlay to kill her husband. And Finlay is kind of like, oh no, I think you've got, you know, the wrong end of the stick here. I just write about murder mysteries. I do not commit any murders. But she gets offered a very large sum of money, and the book kind of goes from there. It's a very silly book. It's not a high stakes mystery, super serious, a lot of twists and turns. Like, it kind of reminds me of, I'm trying to think of like a film that has murder, but it's a bit of a comedy as well. Maybe like Murder Mystery with Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston. You know, it's like it has murder, but it's quite low stakes. It's a bit silly, it's a bit ridiculous, a bit far-fetched. You're not gonna go into it thinking it's gonna be like a Frida McFadden type murder. It's not really like that at all. So again, I think I rated this one a 3.5 because it was quite entertaining watching the main character kind of become a hit woman, even though it's not something that she's ever done before. It's a bit silly. You kind of think, how is she able to actually get away with what she's getting away with? So it is a bit far-fetched in that sense. But if you want a bit of a quick palette cleanser but you don't want to reach for a romance, and you don't mind something that might be a bit silly and a bit, you know, ridiculous, then I think it's actually quite a fun one. Again, it didn't really contain any twists and turns. I wasn't left on the edge of my seat, so it didn't get a 4-star rating for me. That's why I left it at 3.5, but it was quite fun. It was quite a quick book to get through. Yeah, it was just a bit silly. Okay, I think I have 2 more to go through. I've basically nearly done my makeup. I'm not going to wear mascara today because I'm just not really in the mood. So the next book I read was Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas. I've read every other Sarah J Maas book apart from the Throne of Glass series. I started with Crescent City. Is that the right thing to do? Probably not. Crescent City is very, very complex, and compared to ACOTAR and what I've read of Throne of Glass so far, it's definitely the most complex. Throne of Glass, at least for me, I'm actually finding it really easy to follow. I wasn't sure what to expect because I read ACOTAR, which, you know, it does have some politics. There is a lot of world building in there. And Crescent City, which is like, you have to keep track of what like 100 characters are doing. They're quite opposite ends of the spectrum, so I didn't know where Throne of Glass was going to fall, but I actually think it's, so far anyway, I've read 2 of the books, but I only finished Crown of Midnight last night, so I'm not going to include that here because that's technically an April read. But you only follow a small number of characters, and you pretty much follow one kingdom as well, so it's really easy. I did find the first book a little bit repetitive in places, so you basically follow Selena, I think Selena, I might be not pronouncing that correctly. So she is competing to be the king's assassin, and they go through a series of trials, and it's basically like survival of the fittest. And I did find the middle of the book, as you follow them as they're doing their various different trials. There's also a couple of murders that take place. I did find it a little bit repetitive because it's kind of, it felt like Groundhog Day almost, like it was kind of the same thing that was happening. But again, I think for a fantasy, it was really easy to understand, it was really easy to read, and I do love the main character. And I've heard that about the Throne of Glass books, you really do get attached to the characters in this series, and it is an 8-book series, so I guess I would kind of expect that because you are following them for quite a long time. So far I am loving the main character, and I think Throne of Glass, I think I'm preferring it to ACOTAR so far, definitely. It's very, very different to Crescent City, so I don't feel fair comparing those two, but really like it so far. I think I gave it a 4. Again, it's the first book in the series, so as the series progresses, as I said earlier, you get more attached to the characters, and I feel like it just gets better and better for me. That's how I found Crescent City, that's how I found ACOTAR. So yeah, that's a 4 for me. And I have decided to read Assassin's Blade after of Fire. I know there's like so many debates about whether to read Assassin's Blade first or a bit further on in the series. Clearly I decided not to read it first. Yeah, I mean, I will never know if I made the right choice because obviously as a reader you can only pick one reading experience, so that's what I've gone with. I think Sarah J. Maas herself updated her reading order and again recommended to read Assassin's Blade a bit further on in the series, so that's what I've done. Okay, I think we're done there. And then my last book that I read was Flawless by Elsie Silver. So I rated this one a 3.5. This is a cowboy romance. So in this one you follow Rhett, who is a very famous bull rider, and he basically has a bit of a PR nightmare, let's say. And his agent's daughter, Summer, has started working at the PR agency and is basically sent to keep an eye on Rhett and make sure that he doesn't get up to anything that could put him in a negative light, should we say, because again, he's treading on eggshells, he is not having a very good PR time. So yeah, Summer is sent to basically keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't get up to anything that's going to continue to damage his reputation, basically. So this is part of the Chestnut Spring series. I believe the series is interconnected standalones, so you don't necessarily follow the same characters throughout all of the books. I think I might be wrong in saying that. But yeah, for me it was fine. The bull riding aspect was okay. There's other sports romances, yeah, that I prefer. I don't know if bull riding is really the sport for me. And there was also something that really icked me out, and this is a total like personal thing as well, but every time Rhett would call Summer princess, I would cringe, I'd get the ick, I'd be like, oh my god, I hate that pet name. It just gave me the ick every time, and that's a very like personal thing. Everyone's gonna have that experience, but for me, if there was like a really serious scene or a spicy scene or something that was quite heart-wrenching, and then he would just call her princess, and it would just completely ruin it for me. So that did kind of ruin my reading experience a little bit. I also felt like, again, Summer was really stringing Rhett along, and it was getting on my nerves quite a lot. I just thought, oh my god, like just give him the time of day. I mean, yeah, I didn't always love how she went about things, let's just say that. So that one was a 3.5, did I say that already? Yeah, that one was a 3.5 for me. So again, not terrible. I think for a quick little romance, it was fine, but there was just a couple of things that annoyed me and gave me the ick. So those were the 6 books that I read in March. I did finish reading Crown of Midnight last night, so that will be in an April roundup video if I do this again. I did quite enjoy talking about books again, not something I really do on my channel. I've never made a dedicated book video, but I thought it would be nice, something a little bit different. So I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.